Hello everyone, and thanks for attending this meeting of Plant Pod Cymru featuring Dr Gemma Newman. And just to say, we've muted everyone to block out any background noise. For those who are not familiar with us, Plant Pod Cymru is a social and support group which promotes a whole food, plant-based lifestyle. We're the first group in Wales affiliated to Plant Pure Communities, the grassroots movement founded by Nelson Campbell, son of T. Colin Campbell, who authored the China study. If you're not a member of our group, you can find Plant Pod Cymru on Facebook, and we'd love for you to join us. Before Dr. Sue Keneally introduces our speaker, I'd just like to encourage people to put any questions for the Q&A in the chat. Over to you, Sue.
Hi everyone, and I'm so glad that everyone's here. Thank you for giving us your time this evening. So it's my job to introduce Gemma, and I did ask her a few days ago, is there anything in particular that you want me to say? Are there any particular accomplishments you need people to know about? And as Gemma always does, she was very generous, and she said, just read my bio on the website and you can use some of that. And there was nothing in particular she wanted me to say. And then I thought, well, people can read that. So I'll tell you who Gemma is to me. She's my friend. She's a wonderful colleague. She's someone I met a few years ago when we both founded Plant-Based Health Professionals UK together with a group of other plant-based doctors. She's a constant inspiration, a constant source of support, and she is a wonderful all-round lady and a fabulous speaker, and I can't wait to hear all about her book this evening and to hear her talk again, because it's always a pleasure and I always learn so much. So I'm going to stop there and stop taking her precious time, and I give you Dr. Gemma Newman.
Oh, that was lovely. Thank you, Sue. I feel the same about you. That was very emotional. Thank you so much. And I'm really honoured to be here with all of you tonight. And I know how precious your evenings are. And I should imagine that Zoom calls are, fairly saturated at this point in your lives when we're now in March 2021. So thank you for spending your evening with me tonight. And I hope that you enjoy it. And as Sue said, and also, well, I think Deb said it actually, it's going to be an evening of answering questions and informal chat. I'll start off by just having a little bit of a chat about the book, which is what Deb's asked me to do. And then it's over to you. So please do ask all the questions you want. Pop them in that chat box there. We'll make sure that we check it and answer everything, hopefully, that we can. And yeah, I've known Sue for a good while now, and I suppose by way of background, I'm a GP like Sue, and I've been in clinical practice for many years, and part of me felt, especially early on in my career, I felt as though I was excited to start my medical career to help save lives, but after a few months I began to realise that it wasn't all it was cracked up to be, and actually people don't fit into neat boxes like I thought they might. You learn about different conditions in medical school and you think it's going to apply to everybody, but of course it doesn't. And there are so many different determinants of health, so many different factors that influence disease. And I realised I felt my toolbox was half empty. And I wanted to try to fill it up with ways in which I could help prevent disease, and in some cases reverse it, but I didn't have that higher hope in those days. I just wanted to help prevent disease, and I knew that GP was the best way of doing that because I could see people from cradle to grave and I could know where they live and who their families are and what their habits are. And so that's why I chose general practice, and I absolutely love it. I've got nearly 3,000 patients. I'm a senior partner at a busy NHS surgery. And I firmly believe that one of the most satisfying things about my job is to help people empower themselves to health, whatever that means for them. And I believe that plant-based nutrition is one of those fundamental tools that they can use if they want to help them towards their most healthy body and mind. Now, there are lots of other things I like to talk about as well. I love to talk about movement and sleep and well-being and mental health, finding purpose and meaning. There's so many different aspects to who we are, but I began to realise early on that the power of the plate was undeniable, and that's why I wrote the book, because it was based on many years of research, but it took quite a while to write. And I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's called The Plant Powered Doctor. Oh, so Sarah's holding up her copy. Oh, so Sean, oh my goodness. Oh, and Jenny. Thanks, ladies. Yeah, well, I won't hold it up again then, but the book is The Plant Power Doctor, a simple prescription for a healthier you. And the whole book was designed around my patients, because I thought to myself, how can I make this information accessible, easy to understand, interesting for people who do have a background in health and medicine, but not so complicated as to go over people's heads. And I really hope that I managed to strike that balance. I made all the chapters colour coded so that it was a bit more interesting as you flick through the book, and there's beautiful colour illustrations done by a friend of mine, and some absolutely gorgeous food photography done by a lovely photographer called Dave. And I'll be forever indebted to him for making my recipes look absolutely delicious, because at the end of the day, what I want for my patients, and let's be honest, for doctors as well, is to truly understand the power of nutrition and how it can help to heal your body, and also how to apply it, how to actually do it. So that's why I included a lot of recipes and how-to as well. So I wanted to make it a one-stop shop for people to improve their health. And so my journey was an interesting one, as I said before. I'll share a bit about my personal story. I didn't always look after my health. I was somebody that never really thought much about food, and I just used to study and read. That was my favourite thing to do. And then when I got on the wards as a junior doctor, it was exhausting work, and I found myself just eating whatever I could to get the energy I needed. So I'd pop to the doctor's mess and eat the Domino's pizzas, and I'd go to the wards and eat all the chocolates, and I basically just did what I could to get by. But then I realised I was getting home absolutely exhausted, and I was only in my 20s, and I thought, this can't continue. How can I continue my medical career like this when I'm barely able to keep my eyes open at the dinner table? So that's when I began to research how lifestyle might help me. And back then, I basically followed popular culture, because in the hubris ego of my youth and my medical training, I thought, well, it's all just about calories in versus calories out and cutting the carbs. It must be, that's what's in all the magazines. And so that's what I did to start with. And don't get me wrong, I did get some results. You know, I managed to get a lot more energy. I managed to lose some of the excess weight that I'd gradually put on, and I felt good. And so I was pleased with my progress. But then what really hit me was when I decided to get my blood tests done, and I realised that I still had a very raised lipid profile. And bearing in mind I'm in my 20s, I knew that wasn't quite right. And I also knew that I had a strong family history of heart disease. And so it really bothered me, because I thought to myself, you know what? I'm doing my absolute best. I'm in my 20s. I'm working hard. I'm in the prime of life, and I still haven't managed to reduce my own risk factors. And I'm sure many of you know that heart disease is the #1 killer here in the UK, #2 in the US, and certainly highly featured in the Western world as one of the top killers, cancer being #2 or #1. And I've got a strong family history of both. And so for me, it felt really disappointing, because I realised that perhaps that was my genetic destiny. But then fast forward a few years, my husband was running the London Marathon. Now, he's not a medic, which I think is a funny part of the story. He just wanted to improve his marathon training. And so he decided to look into what the ultra marathon runners do, because he was getting a lot of inflammation and injury, and he wanted to do well. Now, me not being a natural athlete, I wasn't paying much attention, but I did begin to notice when he was getting faster, when he was stopped having inflammation, when he had the energy to do a marathon in the morning and look after the kids in the afternoon. I realised that when he was adopting his plant-based diet, he was doing so much better. And people were saying to me, oh, why is that then? And I said, oh, I don't know. They said, well, you're a doctor, you should know. So I thought, oh, maybe I should. So I started to do a lot more research, and I began to realise that there were tremendous benefits from having an antioxidant and phytonutrient-rich diet. Certainly there's evidence to show it improves recovery times for athletic endeavours. But my heart lies in helping my patients. And it's probably the same for a lot of you who are healthcare professionals. You know, you're always thinking about your patients and how their lives might be improved. And so I decided to delve into some of that data. And lo and behold, I did find a tremendous amount of evidence to suggest that plant-based approaches were so useful, not just for athletic endeavours, but also for heart disease, for cancer, for hormonal health, for diabetes, for skin health, for longevity, and in fact, potentially for all ages. So again, that's what all the chapters in my book are about. And I wanted to make it so straightforward for people to be able to access the bits that they're interested in, have a flick through, and decide what they think about the research. So yeah, I suppose that's my story in a nutshell. I could go on and talk a bit about my patients' experiences, about how to create lifestyle change in a 10-minute consultation. I could talk in a lot more detail about specific diseases like cancer and diabetes and heart disease. But I think probably because I've got such a lovely interactive audience, there's 22 of you now, 21 I suppose if I take myself out, then why not pass the floor over to you? Because I know that Deborah said that there were so many questions, and hopefully some of these topics will come up in the course of our chat tonight. And I want to make it as interactive as possible so that you make sure that your questions are answered. So if I hand back over to whoever it is that's going to be asking me the questions, and I look forward to chatting a bit more.
Well, thank you so much. I think that's me. I think that was really insightful and gave us a really good picture of who you are as a doctor, and what brought you to the plant-based way of treating your patients and living, I guess, as well. One of the questions that we have coming up from Sarah, the first question, can you say a bit about keto? She finds it frustrating when people promote it and say we don't need carbs. I myself actually had a Facebook exchange with somebody who absolutely insisted that keto was the best thing ever, and that fiber's bad for us and toxic and so on, and gave up in the end. I'm not a nutritionist, but what would you say to people with those sorts of opinions?
It's hard, isn't it? And I can see it's so easy to get caught up in these heated exchanges. And I've done that in the past as well myself. I think the bottom line is, and I know that Sue's quite good at this, the bottom line is start with listening. Now, it's so true that when you've done a lot of research and you feel as though you really know your stuff, and somebody else is coming along and saying things that you categorically disagree with, it's tremendously difficult to just hear them out. And but it's probably one of the most helpful things to do, because well, first up, it might give them the chance to change their mind, because you never know, they might do. But also, secondly, it makes you sound very reasonable if you are having an internet chat and there are other people watching and trying to figure out what they're thinking, because that's why sometimes these internet chats can be useful, is if you remain respectful and just share some data in a calm and kind way. The people that are watching, the people that are reading, might then be inspired to look up some of the links and take it from there. But lead with kindness if you can. That would be my philosophy anyway, because it ends up being really divisive, and people get entrenched in their point of view, and then it can be very hard. And I really aim in my interactions to help understand where people are coming from, because loads of people have had some really good results with keto. They feel great, they're full of energy, and they want to share it. They're feeling really evangelical about it. And so I really try not to sort of dampen their enthusiasm, but just get curious and ask them questions. And what I've found to be personally the case, based on the research I've done and based on people that I've chatted to who've tried this way of eating, is that they can feel great to start with, but sooner or later down the line, that sometimes the problems come up. And for those of you who haven't researched keto, it's very specific as a dietary plan. It doesn't just encompass sort of low carb or paleo. It's quite a lot more extreme, and I suppose the carnivore diet would be even more extreme. But the idea is that you are limiting the amount of carbohydrates that you eat, specifically. And It can cause problems long term, as you probably know. It can potentially increase, or certainly for at least a third of people who try it, it can dramatically increase their lipid profile. I'd probably have been one of those people who was unfortunate enough to have a very raised lipid profile with a keto plan. And it can cause constipation, varicose veins, diverticular disease, pancreatitis, even a couple of case histories of death in poor unfortunate children who had to do a ketogenic diet very strictly for the treatment of refractory epilepsy. So this is epilepsy that hadn't responded to medication. It's actually a potential treatment for that particular scenario. So yes, it definitely has its uses, but it really needs to be supervised by somebody with nutritional qualifications if you're doing it for that kind of reason. But if you're doing it for general health, as you know, Angela, fibre is so important for our overall health, for the beneficial microbes that help us to produce hormones, that help us to regulate our neurotransmitters, that help us in maintaining the integrity of our gut wall. And I would say to people who are having benefits that actually, I suspect that one of the main reasons that people do benefit from a ketogenic lifestyle is that it's essentially a form of exclusion diet, because many of the things that we eat, including the healthy plant-based foods that we enjoy, can sometimes aggravate the gut lining if we have damage to our gut lining. And damage can come from a number of sources. Prolonged courses of antibiotics, for example, might do it. High exposure to pesticides might do it. Emulsifiers in foods might do it. If you have celiac disease, then eating gluten will do it. There's a number of different things that can help to degrade the gut wall so that when you do eat these healthy foods, you don't quite have the apparatus to know how to deal with them, which is why it's important, if you are embarking on a plant-based lifestyle and you have been doing keto, or you have had a history of long antibiotic use for recurrent cystitis or acne or whatever it might be, is to take it really slow and gradually build up those good gut bugs and gradually build up the tolerance to these foods so that your gut can start to feel strong, and to really think about it in the way that you might think about muscle building at the gym. Now, I'm not a gym goer, and I've never had a gym membership, but people do lift weights, people do go to the gym. Most people are familiar with the analogy, and it can sometimes really help, because what you're doing when you're increasing your fibre is it's like giving your gut a lovely healthy workout. And the more you do over time, the better your gut will be at tolerating and then beginning to reap the benefits of these tremendously healthy foods. The short chain fatty acids that are produced by the mix of the microbes and the fibre rich foods that you're eating, they're fantastic. They help reduce your risk of diabetes, and they help to reduce your glycemic index. They help with polycystic ovaries, they help with insulin resistance, they help with all sorts of things. So it's definitely beneficial, but you've got to give yourself time. Don't go to the gym and lift the heaviest weight, otherwise you rupture something. You've got to take it nice and slow and reap those benefits, but it's definitely worth doing. Maybe that's how you could describe it to somebody who's not sure.
Thank you. That's a great answer. Thank you very much.
Shall I ask a question, Angela? Yeah, okay. I was wondering, when did you first decide to write your book, and what prompted you to do so? I know you've answered that in part, but did you feel that there was a gap in knowledge in the UK that needed
to... Yes, Deborah, I really did. There was a huge gap, and something needed to change. I'd see all these American books, and the research in all the journals. And I thought to myself, there's nothing for patients. There's nothing for patients to read that can really help them understand. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm so grateful for all the work of the plant-based health professionals. And, Sue will tell you, we've put together a tremendous amount of resources, not just myself, but lots of people. It's nutritionist led. I understand that Layla has been one of the main people behind a lot of the patient information leaflets. So, Plant-Based Health Professionals UK are doing tremendous work, creating an Eat Well guide, a huge amount of patient information leaflets, educational sessions, webinars. It's brilliant. But in terms of actually going to a bookshop and picking something up or obviously in the days of pandemics, going onto Amazon or wherever, whichever retailer you want to buy it from online. There was nothing available that was completely plant-based, nothing available that showed you some of the tremendous research that's been done, and nothing that could show you the genuine power of improving the amount of plants you put on your plate. I think it's just this general idea of, yeah, we get that fruits and vegetables are healthy, but how much difference can it really make? Well, this research is here to show you that it can actually make a huge amount of difference for a lot of people. And it's not a panacea, of course. You know, it's not going to solve everybody's problems, but my goodness, it can be so impactful. And as you say, there just wasn't anything around for patients. So that's why I wrote the book. I could see that there was a huge gap to fill. You know, and obviously I'm excited to see that more and more books are coming out now that share the same message, and I think that's wonderful that we're getting books by other healthcare professionals that people can reference, and I'll get a couple of other ones that you might want to share with your patients, or with your friends if you're not medical. You know, we have the work of TJ Waterfall. He's an elite athlete nutritionist. The plant-based power plan. I have to warn you, it is in black and white, but that shouldn't put you off because it's written by a really good guy. He's a nutritionist, and he really knows his stuff. So that's by TJ Waterfall. We've got Dr. Alan Desmond's book, The Plant-Based Diet Revolution. It was published on the very same day as mine, so we did an Instagram live together to celebrate. It's a great recipe book, and it's got a 28-day plan for people to enjoy, and some lovely, as I say, some lovely colour photography and recipes in there, which is absolutely fantastic. So these are British resources, people from the UK doing books for people who, you know, live in the UK, which is great, because sometimes it's hard to relate to the American books, especially if they are quite dense in terms of the knowledge base, or they don't have the colour photographs to inspire us.
I had one more question. In your opinion, how does the UK compare with America in terms of the medical community being aware of the whole food plant-based science and incorporating it into practice? Is it like America, do you think, or on a par with America?
Well, it's hard to say because I haven't sort of, I don't know that many American doctors on the ground, so to speak, but I think, you know, progress is being made. You've got the Plant-Based Health Professionals UK, and they work strongly. Well, I don't know what you think about this, Sue, but they do work alongside the BSLM, British Society of Lifestyle Medicine. Sue is a key speaker and a voice in the BSLM. And as far as I know, a lot of the curriculum for the diploma that is offered by the BSLM is in line with what the ACLM talk about with regard to, you know, the benefits of plants. So I think that there's definitely some strong links there. But, you know, there is work to be done. And I think obviously there's work to be done as well at the level of medical students. I know that the Doctor's Kitchen, Dr. Rupi Ojla, he has created something called the Culinary Medicine course, which is an educational resource for Bristol University students, outlining the importance of nutrition. And, you know, I think that you've got NutriTank, which is another great organisation that's got speakers in promoting lifestyle medicine and nutrition. I think, you know, we're not all necessarily 100% aligned in what we think is the ultimate nutritional approach, but we all have good intentions and we all have seen great improvements for our patients, and that's what it's all about. I hope that in future there'll be even more collaboration between plant-based health professionals and organisations like BSLM and whatever other new organisations pop up. I think there is definitely a real thirst for knowledge and, you know, for ways to help our patients to make our lives more fulfilling, because, you know, what we want ultimately is to help our patients get well. And, you know, that's hard to do when you don't look at other things and sort of take a more 360-degree approach. So yeah, I do think that things are changing, and also it's inevitable that plant-based approaches will hopefully be more valued as time goes on, because ultimately we do face, as many of you know, we do face the 6th mass extinction event on Earth. And that's a sad truth. But the only way we're going to be able to tackle that is by looking far more closely at plant-based approaches, which can be healthy for us and also healthy for the environment. The Royal College of GPs talks about their Green Impact Scheme, which is fantastic. It's a way of helping GP surgeries to promote plant-based diets, among other things, to help reduce the environmental impact that we're having on the world. And in fact, there are even potential brownie points for GPs who talk about the benefits of plant-based diets with their staff as well as their patients as part of the Green Impact Scheme, which is, as I say, it's an initiative by the Royal College of GPs. We've got the British Dietetic Association and their One Blue Dot campaign, which is all about One Blue Dot references Earth and how it looks from space. And it's the idea of protecting that one blue dot, that home that we all share. And the BDA are doing a lot of work to try and promote that. And sustainable plant-based diets are a part of that promotion. So, I do think that we are making progress. We have to, but fingers crossed that we're making progress as fast as we need to.
Yeah. Thanks. Back to you, Angela.
Okay, so we have a question here from Gwerdville, who apologises for not being vegan. No need to apologise for not being vegan. But I'm
not offended, it's all right.
The question is, what have you found are the most likely culprits for inflammation? Sugar, dairy or wheat? And how long should one try to go without before they might notice a difference?
Well, that's a great question, and it's very person specific. So I think probably, how do I say this? I think different people have different responses to different exclusions, and I really aim to try to focus more on what we can include more of in our diet rather than less. Because it means that we can hopefully have a bit more of a healthy and exciting attitude to what we put on our plate. So I emphasize the importance of a variety of fruits and vegetables, as well as healthy whole grains and legumes. So when you mention wheat, I'd say it's a tough one, because for most people, wheat is not necessarily an inflammatory food. Clearly, if you have celiac disease, it will be. And if you have non-celiac gluten sensitivity, it may well be. But there are a number of reasons why we develop non-celiac gluten sensitivity, which may or may not be as a result of the wheat itself. We could talk a little bit about farming practices and pesticide use and how we mill our grains and what that means for our gut lining. But I don't want to make things too complicated. Suffice to say that I think probably sugar and dairy are going to be more noticeable depending on your own circumstances and your own gut health. But main thing I would say is fruits and veggies and legumes, and certainly even if you have celiac, there are certain whole grains that you can really enjoy and make the most of on your plate. That would be really healthy, buckwheat and amaranth and other more exotic grains that we can go into. But there is plenty of evidence to suggest that whole grains are actually really beneficial for long-term health for the vast majority of us, as are legumes like beans, lentils, chickpeas, and all of that. So focus on those as much as you can, and the rest of it, just be aware that it can cause inflammation. My dog is desperate to join in. She's been scratching at the door. Now she's forced her way in. So I will just make a little introduction for you all. What was that? Oh, okay. My 9-year-old son let her in, so she didn't manage it. But this is Rosie. She's black, so you can't really see her very easily in this light. But I'll just get her to lie down. Hold on a second. Come on. Sit down. Sit down. Sorry about that. But yeah, I hope that answered the question anyway. She came in at just the right moment.
I think that's a really comprehensive answer, and it's lovely to see your dog. It's usually my cat walking across the screen in meetings. So
yeah, she likes being around me. I don't know where everyone else is, but never mind. She's with me now.
I've banished him for the evening. He's not very happy with me. So. We've got a question here from Josephine, and I think it's a question from a doctor. She says that she loves helping patients with lifestyle, but struggles to achieve this in a 10-minute consultation. Do you have any tips? And I think her other question you've kind of touched on, and that's the resources that you signpost patients towards, especially those with the kind of worst eating habits.
Yeah, and I think how far you get with helping your patients often depends on where they're at as well. I think so. Try not to be too hard on yourself. I have a little acronym that I'm sure Sue is familiar with, but it does help me to figure out how to approach these kinds of conversations, and I'm hoping it might be useful for those of you who are not medical in thinking about how you might converse with people to help them change the things that they might be doing that are less than healthy. It's called Blend It. Blend It. And Blend It stands for believe, listen, evoke, no bossing, desire, and then it stands for information and timed. So that's Blend It. B is for believe, L is for listen, E is for evoke, N is for no bossing, D is for desire, I is for information, and T is for timed. So just to explain that a little bit more, the first thing that you've got to do when you're talking to anybody about something that they might want to change is you've got to believe that it's possible for them to change. And our patients go through all sorts of extraordinary things, because we think that it's beneficial. They go for uncomfortable investigations and blood tests and examinations, and we have to believe it's of some benefit for them to be willing to even listen. So we do have to believe that it's going to be beneficial for them, and we do that by looking at the research at hand. But also we have to believe that they're capable and that it's something that they can achieve. And that's really important because there's loads of research now about the importance of the placebo effect and how it can improve overall health. But there's also another important factor that we don't always consider, and that's the patient doctor or the client doctor or even the friend relationship, and how that belief in what you're suggesting can really impact their ability to make a shift and be arguably as powerful as a placebo effect moving forward, which is something that I think a lot of doctors don't necessarily realise, the power of their words, the power of their attention. So L stands for listen, and I mentioned that earlier. It's really important to listen to where they're at, what they want, what they think they're capable of, what they're asking you for. And look as well, obviously in the pandemic, a lot of us are taking more telephone consultations, but when you're seeing people face to face, take the time to really look at them, give them your attention for at least the first 60 to 120 seconds of your 10-minute appointment. It will mean that, according to research, they believe that you've actually spent longer with them than you really did, because you spent that first 60 seconds to 120 seconds actually looking at them, really listening, maybe reflecting what they've said back to them so they know that you were really listening. And it takes just a little bit of time, but it's definitely time well spent, because it means that they're much more likely to listen when you get to the point in that consultation where they're asking for your advice. So E is for evoke. I think one of the things that's really helpful in a consultation is if you can help them to imagine a better future self. So you ask them questions about what they really want, how they want to feel, what they want to be able to do. You can even ask them how they managed to achieve certain improvements in the past and how that made them feel. And you can basically help them to imagine that better future. Now, no bossing, that's the hardest one. That's the hardest one for me anyway. But the best piece of advice I was ever given when I spoke to someone about my medical career was that I had to leave my ego out of the consultation room. So it doesn't matter what the outcome is. It doesn't matter from your perspective what your patient takes away, what they decide to do, whether they fail. You just have to give your best, and the patient takes what they take from it. And it doesn't mean that you don't care Of course you care, but it's just about giving them the autonomy to make that decision for themselves. And they will hopefully sense the fact that not only do you care, but that you're leaving the decision to them. So it's very important not to boss them around. I'll tell you another reason. People really resist being bossed about. It makes them more entrenched in what they already do. And you're in fact giving them reasons to argue why what they do at the moment is what they're going to continue to do. So you have to get them to voice the reasons for change. You have to get them to tell you the reasons why they want to try something new, the reasons why they want to feel better. D is for desire. So that feeds into the evoke. You have to build the desire in them to actually take action, rather than that sort of contemplative phase where they're just kind of thinking about it, but they're not quite ready to take an action decisively. This is your moment. If you think that they're in the phase where they're ready to take action, then you can again build that desire in them. You can tell them to tell you the things that they're looking forward to, the things that they're planning, and you can get them to be really specific about that as well. I stands for information, as I said. So this is important. You ask them, would you like some information? Would you prefer internet resources? Would you prefer a book to look at? What would really appeal to you? And see what they say. They might actually say, no, I'm not interested. And then you think, okay, well, I was about to launch into a spiel about all the resources, but as they've said no, then I may as well save my breath. So, that's important as well, because that feeds into the listening aspect of the consultation. But if they are ready and they tell you what resources they want, then you can be there ready and waiting to give them what they want. And it really depends on who they are. So if they're an athlete, you might want to give them TJ Waterfall's book, or you might want to direct them to, I don't know, the Game Changers website so they can look up some recipes there. If they are into healthy living and they're 30 or less, you might tell them to check out Deliciously Ella's website and all her books. Not that it's limited to the under 30s, but she's got a lot of followers on Instagram. If they are somebody who is really into sort of a specific condition, you can say, well, if you direct them to, well, it's not just my website, but the plant-based health professionals, they've got loads of particular conditions that you can give them leaflets if they're not ready to make a commitment to buy a book. My website as well actually has got loads of free resources, tons of interviews and articles and blog pieces on all different conditions. So they haven't got to have the money to buy the book even. They can just look at all that free stuff and then decide what actually appeals to them. And T is for timed. So again, it's about being specific. You're helping them to make a decision based on a time frame. So you could say, oh, what do you think you can do towards your new goal in the next day or two? And what do you think it might look like in a week or so? Just so that they can actually start to picture in their mind what they might want to do. And that's lovely then, because it gives you an excuse to improve their accountability, because you can hopefully write it in the notes and then you can remember it the next time they pop in. And you can say, how did you get on, with this particular thing that you said or that thing? And it just builds that relationship. And remember, it's not necessarily about making massive changes in one conversation. It's happened a couple of times for me where it's just taken one phone call and somebody's been that motivated that they wanted to make a change there and then. But for most people, it's not like that. You can just plant those seeds, and if they're planted at the right time with the right amount of water and the right amount of sunshine and the right amount of nutrient-rich soil, then those little sort of seeds of possibility can grow into beautiful plants. But if not, then that's okay. There'll be new seeds to plant another day.
I think that's a really thorough answer and some really useful points there about helping people to make positive changes, not just if you're a physician or a healthcare professional, but if you've got friends around you as well. So that's really, really useful. I've written quite a lot of that down actually.
Oh,
that's great. I think it's something we'll share on the on the group as well, if you don't mind.
Of course.
Thank you. We have a question from Sian here. It's related to her GP practice. She'd like to know how to educate her GP practice about the tremendous health benefits of a whole food plant-based diet. She says that her GP's response to her saying that she follows a plant-based diet was, we don't support extreme diets. So she would love to donate your book to her practice, but she's not sure how that might be received.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about that. I think it sounds like your GP's made up their mind, but they might enjoy the book. You never know. And what's interesting, you know, I really tried in the book to create a very a balanced perspective. And the truth is that you don't have to go vegan to reap some of these benefits. You really don't. You know, some of these benefits can be achieved, you know, to a large degree with a number of different dietary strategies, but of course they will have to involve a large amount of plants. And so, you know, that's what the book delves into. So what I'm hoping is that it will appeal to people who are vegan and want to improve their health, and also to share some of those benefits of a healthy vegan lifestyle with their family and friends that might worry. But predominantly, I actually want it to appeal to people who have no interest in being vegan, because that's the majority of people at the moment. And you know, the way I see it is, if people can eat more plants on their plate and feel good about it and enjoy it, then that's a great thing. And you know, we need many hundreds and thousands of people to do that, rather than, you know, necessarily having a handful of people who decide to go vegan. So I'd love if you could donate the book and see what they say. If they want to delve into some of the data, I have put some key references in the back of the book, which is usually enough for most people if they want to have a flick through. But if they wanted to actually look at all the references and all the sentences that they pertain to and all the chapters, then they are all listed on my website under the reference section, listed by chapter and listed by sentence. So if there's any study that they want to look into, they can read it up themselves if they just look at the website. Angela, you're on mute.
I knew I would do that at some point. They might actually want to see the recording of this chat as well, maybe. Howard asks, isn't vegan junk food also plant-based at bottom?
Plant-based at bottom?
Yeah.
Do you mean it's not as healthy?
I'm guessing, I'm interpreting here, I'm guessing that Howard means it's a set that even vegan junk food is essentially plant-based. So
oh yes, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
If it doesn't contain animal products, it's plant-based. And I love how there's lots of different companies now who are noticing that there has to be a fundamental shift towards a more plant-based lifestyle, and they're putting labels on their foods to say that they're vegan. I noticed it most recently with salt and vinegar kettle crisps. They're vegan now, but they were always vegan, but they like to put that plant-based sticker on, or a vegan sticker. And I think it's interesting because that, you know, we do have that confusion where people can sometimes conflate the benefits of a healthy plant-based diet with, you know, a vegan lifestyle, and it is slightly different. I'm sure many of you will know. I personally would class myself as vegan, but that's more to do with a general lifestyle choice around reducing any harm to animals, which is actually a very different prospect than deciding to eat a more whole food plant-based diet just for health purposes. And I think that it is important for people to realise that the fruits and the veggies and the whole grains and the legumes and the herbs and spices and nuts and seeds, those are all the great whole foods that you will benefit from if you enjoy a more plant-based diet, but that there are other choices that are similar to what you might eat if you were omnivorous. You know, you could have a factory farmed beef burger with a slice of cheese. And I would say, to be honest, that I do see that as being an intrinsically less healthy option than a Beyond Burger with fake cheese. The reason for that is that one of the, you know, the soy-based alternatives to meat, yes, they contain salt, yes, they contain fat. They wouldn't be as healthy at all as a bean burger or something like that, but they can be useful for people who are so used to the taste of meat and really enjoy the taste of meat. And they don't contain heme iron, they don't contain U5GC, they don't contain heterocyclic amines, these cancer-causing chemicals that are released when you cook or barbecue meat. So, overall, you may still get some benefits, but clearly you're not going to get you're not going to get the full spectrum of benefits unless you lean more towards whole foods, which is hopefully the message that most people will get when they read this book. I've specifically mentioned that fake and processed foods are not the health-giving side of a plant-based approach, but of course there is a role for them. If we're going to enjoy a slow transition, or if we're going to really focus on environmental and planetary health, it's still a very important part of the equation.
I agree. I think that's a really helpful summary. Claire asks, how do you make a whole food plant-based diet appealing to the masses?
Well, you create some fabulous recipes. It's hard, isn't it? Because people think it's boring, don't they? But I think probably the best way of doing it is to show by example. Focus on enjoyment, focus on abundance, focus on creating simple swaps that they're going to absolutely love, and really infusing it with flavour by using a number of different herbs and spices and mixes. Maybe making some simple suggestions. So if they say that they love a certain meal that they couldn't let go of, then you can make some simple swap suggestions that they might enjoy. It depends on who you're talking to, but they have to want to listen. So you don't want to start on this bandwagon of telling them all the things they should be doing, and then they'll switch right off. So, get their attention by making delicious food that they couldn't even imagine being delicious because it's vegan, and then they try it and they love it.
You could have an alternative career in marketing.
Well, probably not, but I do try.
So we've got a few more questions. We've got one here, I think it was asked by Sarah. Is there any research to show that a plant-based diet would benefit people in their 80s?
Is there any research to show? Well, I can tell you a personal story to say that it definitely does. I have a lovely patient that springs to mind. He's in his 80s, a really high blood pressure, and he decided to try a whole foods plant-based diet. I gave him some written resources, and he went away and he made some spreadsheets, and he cooked some food, and he got some ready meals that were plant-based. And I talked about all the different things that he wanted to have more of, and it was incredible. He came back to see me, and he'd managed to bring his blood pressure down. Now, he's still on antihypertensive medication, but he brought it down from dangerously high levels to levels of around 145, 150 systolic, which is pretty good for somebody who's up in the 200s. And he was on all sorts of medications, and we weren't getting anywhere. And he said to me, "It's never too late, is it, doctor? It's never too late." And I said, "No, it's never too late." And he was just such an inspiration to me, because he was willing to try something new, and he certainly did reap the benefits.
That's brilliant. So it's never too late. I was listening to a podcast from the Physicians Committee, and there was a gentleman in his 90s who'd made the switch to a whole food plant-based diet and had had some really good outcomes with his diabetes and heart disease. So I think that there is some evidence out there now, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, we just have to, I suppose, extrapolate the evidence we do have and imagine that it may well be useful at any age. And I think that was one of the things I remember hearing about. Dr. Michael Greger talked about it years ago. One of the main reasons why he was even inspired to go into nutritional research was his own grandmother, who was sent home with severe heart failure in her 60s. She thought that she was just going to be, fading away, but she decided to go on a program of nutritional health and longevity by Nathan Pritikin, who was actually an engineer. He wasn't a doctor, but incredibly, she managed to live over 30 more years on her plant-based diet, certainly long enough to see her grandson's graduation. And that was one of Dr. Greger's main reasons for creatingnutritionfacts.org, for writing his New York Times bestselling books, and of course, you know, sharing all that information for free for everybody to read and understand in simple, digestible videos. So, you know, these stories show us that it's definitely never too late.
Absolutely. So that leads us to the next question. Why is diet and lifestyle medicine even still not included in the curriculum for UK medical students? That's from Sean.
Oh, Sean, thanks for the question. I wish I knew the answer to that, but I don't. I think it would be wonderful if it was, and I did mention earlier that I do think things are changing. We've got the culinary medicine course that Dr. Orgler put together. We've got NutriTank, which is, you know, an exciting branch of lifestyle medicine for medical students. I think it's definitely changing. But the fact is, within a 5-year degree course, there is so much to learn, and the science is always shifting. And there's an incredible amount that medical students have to focus on. And I think it would be lovely if we focus more on lifestyle and less on pharmaceuticals. But of course, we do need to know a little bit about everything. And I'm hoping that it can also be a part of postgraduate education for a number of different specialties, not just general practice. I heard, in fact, it was Dr. Alan Desmond, actually. He said, look, I didn't learn how to do colonoscopies in medical school. These are things that we can learn over time, that we can hopefully, you know, increase our knowledge of within our different specialties as we move forward throughout the years of our training. So my hope is that not only will this be something that's more featured in curriculums moving forward, which it seems to be, but also that it's something that can be emphasised in a number of different subspecialties as well. Perhaps not pathology, but everything else.
So we've got 2 more questions. Is that okay?
Yes, of course.
Okay, great, thanks. Sarah asks about a structured and respected course that you might be able to recommend on nutrition. It's just for her own benefit, not for work. Is there anything out there you could recommend?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what kind of time commitment you're looking for. You could speak to Dr. Sue Keneally about what she did. She's done a tremendous amount of work to enjoy the benefits of knowledge of having a proper nutrition degree from a prestigious university, and she worked hard for that. If that's something that you're not quite wanting to commit to, then I mean, I really do rate the Sustainable Nutrition course, which is run by the University of Winchester. I'm pretty sure, Sue, you might agree with me on this. It's really well put together, and although it doesn't give you a university accredited diploma, it is accredited by the University of Winchester. So it really is a good course, very reasonably priced, and it gives you a lovely foundation into a lot of the different ways in which plant-based nutrition can be helpful. There is the online course run by the T. Colin Campbell Centre for Research. It's online, as I said, and it's a reasonable option for people, but it's actually more expensive than the University of Winchester course, and it may not necessarily cover the same ground. So, you know, I would probably recommend that overall because it's also online. And, you know, you've got resources from BANT and SANO, and, you know, as I say, there are webinars by Plant-Based Health Professionals UK, which are really good standard, that is open to everybody, and membership is open to everybody as well, not just medics, and it actually really supports the work of plant-based health professionals if you'd like to be members and watch any of the videos for free as many times as you want and join in events when we're able to. So yeah, the webinars are fabulous, and they run every fortnight at the moment, and they have done for this last year or so. They're absolutely top-notch high quality if you're wanting a little bit of extra CPD.
That's great. Our final question is from Josephine, and she asks, is there any evidence comparing vegetarian versus vegan diets for health outcomes?
Yes, there are a few. I think it's interesting with nutritional data. Most of the epidemiological data doesn't have quite enough of a cohort of vegans, and it depends on which ones you're looking at. Probably the best ones would be the Adventist Health Studies 1 and 2, They've got a nice mix of different eating patterns, the omnivore to pescatarian to vegetarian to vegan. And the beauty of that is that they're all otherwise relatively similar in their lifestyles. Seventh-day Adventists tend to focus on health generally. They're a healthy population overall, so it's quite nice to be able to compare outcomes between them, which is a nice place to start. So yeah, there are a few, but I think the Oxford as well. The Oxford's I've forgotten the name of it now, but Sue can remind you perhaps. You've got the Oxford data, which is quite interesting. Again, there's not a massive amount of vegans, but there are a few. I think there was recently a great study comparing specifically plant-based approaches with Mediterranean diet approaches, and it seemed to favour plant-based diets. EPIC, that's right. Yes, Sue, thanks. The EPIC Oxford, which is another epidemiological cohort, is a prospective study looking at a certain population of people over a number of years. You've got the health professionals follow-up studies, you've got the nurses health study. These are all really interesting because they're health professionals filling in these dietary and lifestyle questionnaires over a long period of time. So it's quite good to be able to see those health outcomes playing out over large populations. But yeah, so there's a few.
Thank you so much. We're almost at 9 o'clock now, so and we've got through all of our questions as well, which is fantastic. It seems like we're very organised and just great at timing. It's just happened that way. So I would just like to say another thank you to you, Dr. Newman, for being here and for answering all of our questions and giving us such an insightful talk this evening. It's just been a real pleasure and a privilege to have you join in with our little pod, and we're very grateful indeed, and I'm sure we'll get a lot out of further discussions as we move back to our Facebook group and in future meetings as well. So thank you so much.
It's my absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's been a lovely evening with you all, and thank you for sparing your time. I know how precious it is, and if you've got any follow-up questions, you can always send me a message on Instagram or an email through my website.
Thank you again.